Broadcasting from our station, spinning 3,900 feet above the watery sphere.
I can see for miles and miles. I can see for miles and miles. I can see for miles and miles and miles and miles and miles.
This is Monitor Duty. Ladies and gentlemen, kids of all ages, it is Wednesday. It is time for Monitor Duty. This is Reese signing on. Today, we are joined by some rare faces and some regular guys. And I want to say to one and all, welcome. Although, I'm going to have to clean out the satellite from all this extra animal here, I think.
I think you just insulted you, Twitless.
Oh, well.
The only non-furry.
He does have a lot of hair on his face, though.
I got nothing on Reese. I don't know if it's
May I say that was today is the most perfectly appropriate time to use that opening for the stream, considering we just launched the Artemis mission to the moon.
Oh, did we? I didn't pay attention. I was working all day like a fiend. So, Isaac, welcome. He says he thinks it's an April Fool's prank. It is not. We are, in fact, here today.
I was wondering about the craziness of that timing.
Oh, the April 1st thing?
The fact that they're launching this on April Fool's Day, yeah.
Oh, that. Oh, yeah, that could be. Yeah. Yeah. So where is this thing going, supposedly?
To the moon.
Oh.
They're bringing humans back to the moon for the first time in, 60 years?
first time ever.
Nice.
That's nonsense. Twitless.
Oh,
he's a stage theater.
So, speaking of the moon landing, though, I just a couple weeks ago, my kids and I sat down and watched Bill Whittle's What We Saw Apollo 11, the 4.5-hour documentary about the whole space program from Mercury all the way through. It is absolutely amazing. So, yeah. Which is only available on Daily Wire. So, which is unfortunate. It should be out there for the whole world to see. It's so good. But
You reminded me of my favorite Bill Whittle video ever. I think it was called Donald Trump versus a turnip.
I don't think I remember that one.
I've got to go save it. But anyway, that might be a little off topic. We're here to talk about creature tech.
Yeah, one of my favorite, just on the subject, one of my favorite Bill Whittle ones is Han Shot First. I share that one every chance I get. Super important. Anyway, we are here today to talk about not about Bill Whittle, and not about Star Wars, and not about the moon landing. Sort of. We're here to talk about Doug TenNapel's creature tech. And before we get,
does have aliens in it. At least
it does in fact have aliens. This is true. So what are everybody? Before we get started, is this the first time people have read creature tech?
Oh yeah.
First time I read it, and it jumped into my top 5 Doug TenNapel books ever very quickly.
This is not the first time that I've read it. I think it's probably the 3rd. But I really did enjoy going back over it again. So, I picked creature tech just kind of at random, just because it's one we hadn't covered at all on the show. And it's one I owned already, so I didn't have to go seek it out. Although I'm kind of thinking of hunting down Iron West. I don't know. Anyway, I guess we should start with is this the first time you guys read it? Real quick, do you want to start with general thoughts, or do you want to dig into what the story is first?
Well, I do have one major question, and that is this supposed to be the book he said was his equivalent to an R-rated movie?
No,
that was
okay.
Cherry Bomb or something. Black Cherry. Okay.
Yeah.
I found myself
That was-
reading it being like, on one hand, Doug, can't believe you're doing that. But then at the same time, I get to the end and I'm like, that was his R-rated movie?
No, that wasn't the one. That's Black Cherry. That's the one with all the swearing. So, which it's a whole different. Although, it does kind of involve aliens, but that's a whole different topic. No, this was second or third, I think, of the graphic novels that he did. I became aware of it from I went to
That makes sense. It does seem early.
Yeah. I'm not sure the exact order of it. I didn't look that up ahead of time, but it is one of the earlier ones. So,
that doesn't surprise me.
So, but yeah. So, So I guess let's go ahead and talk a little bit about what creature tech is. Now, I do want to point out one of the funniest things, not about the book. If you guys haven't picked up on it, there is typically, it's not always the case, but typically whenever there is a Doug TenNapel property, it's basically two words that don't fit together that are mashed together to become the title. And that's the conceit. So once you see that, you kind of can't unsee that.
Mhm.
Earthworm Jim, Bigfoot Bill, Creature Tech, Rat Fist. Yeah.
Power
There's
up,
more.
yeah.
There are more patterns in. He has his typical toolbox, and that's the. Having read a chunk of his oeuvre, I've those are the things I think are the more interesting to explore.
Yep.
Why is it that Doug often has a story where you have a tall, gangly character symbiotically attached to some gooey symbiote like creature? It's a repeating idea. And so you kind of want to just ask, like, where does that one come from? Because
I feel like that comes from two places. The gangly part simply comes from what he's good at drawing. The symbiotic slimy creature thing is because he's a big fan of Calvin and Hobbes.
I mean, again, I'd want to dig a little more into that because it's a very specific kind of symbiotic gooey thing that attaches to your midsection and does like a bunch of like very specific kind of sci-fi things, and it's actually I'm not just bringing this up for the heck of it. This is actually very plot specific in this work in particular.
Yeah.
That gooey multifunction symbiote is plot dependent. The plot revolves around that thing.
Yes.
I had a general thought. Twitless, you actually kind of haunted me a little bit because I kept remembering something you said about Doug while reading this one. I think you once described Doug TenNapel as the kid who got in trouble for drawing skeleton soldiers as a kid in Sunday school. And I completely see that in Creature Tech. This is the quintessential Christian book by a weird Christian kid.
Yeah. No, that would track.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. Okay, let me get on the screen.
It does lead to, because I personally I thought I like some of it. Again, it ranks mid tier to me. That's kind of like where I was placing it, and then the more I thought about it, there is some things that actually I'm not a big fan of, but they're more personal.
The
Is that
Shroud
mid-tier normally?
Yeah,
Or mid-tier for
yeah. And again, I'm saying that's a personal thing. I'm not. That's a separate point. The usage of that, I'm not as thrilled about.
I want to talk about the Shroud of Turin. So something that struck me is that when Doug has his characters talking, it's very direct. And he's even said on this show, he wants them to talk about Christ out loud on screen, or people won't get it. Right. Mm-hmm. In contrast to that, like the way he used some of the religious symbolic elements, I thought it's almost like he's he's like a converted pagan. So it reminds me of a way that a mangaka might take Christianity and throw it at a vampire, and they're not a Christian. They're just using it because it seems cool. And so there's definitely an element where the Shroud of Turin is in this book Because reconstructing the creative process is like on the napkin, and then they get the Shroud of Turin, and the Shroud of Turin brings things to life, and then they have to use that to the bad guy uses it to come back to life, and then they have to use it. So I can see the crazy creative process of it, but it results in extreme. It's an extremely weird use of the Shroud of Turin because the bad guys can use it to bring the things to life.
Yes,
right?
that was the strange thing for me. Not the fact that Doug was using it at all, because as we know, he's not a Catholic, and it's like you would think that he would.
Well,
So-
and I mean, I think
Let-
one
let
of the
me-
aspects.
I could maybe defend. I can kind of defend that point a little bit. I think the thing that soured me on it was personally, I'm not a fan of using religious symbolism in a comedic way. Because, like, the Chronicles of Narnia is this, for example, heavily, allegory. It's mixing, pagan ideas, medieval paganism or mythology with Christianity and so on. But it's very much treated very much on the same sanctified level. Like, Aslan is never the butt of a joke. And so because Doug's so talented at doing humorous scenes, I'm not even sure if this was consciously done. I'm just saying that when the Shroud of Turin is used as a bit of like almost like a punchline in a couple moments like that, I didn't, on a personal level, I did not care for that.
Now, this might be so. Doug as Protestant, they also have a bit where one of the weirdos has a cinnamon bun that looks like Jesus. So he's kind of making fun of the tendency to have religious objects, right, as special. And then there's even a plot point where the dad doesn't like that the son found the Shroud of Turin because he says that's almost cheating. You're not supposed to just see it. You're supposed to find God through faith, not through proofs.
Yeah.
So what's weird is it's dealt with textually, but its presence in the story is almost purely as a cool plot device. It's not the Shroud of Turin that results in the conversion. Yeah.
Well, and I think that's one of the aspects that we have. That's it. One of the ways that I'm reading the thing, right, is that there is a dividing line between plot elements that are there as plot elements and plot elements that are there to discuss the philosophy behind the plot elements, right? And so, in a work of fiction, right, the concept of the Shroud of Turin is not the stand-in for the invisible God, right? It is merely like the manifested consequences of the invisible God, of the unseen God. And I think that's more about the thing. So it does not represent divinity or righteousness. It just represents that it has been touched by the fount of life. In the same way that
it has to represent divinity on some level, or it wouldn't be able to do what it does. So it has to have some level of.
Well, the thing is, I would argue that when we're talking about divinity, like from a philosophical perspective, divinity can't be divorced from agency, and the Shroud doesn't have agency, right? It affects everything the same way. It's the rain falling on the just and the unjust, right? I think
it loses a. Honestly, like I said, this is where I struggled with. We're getting ahead of ourselves. We should probably explain.
Yeah,
we should probably before we
definitely
dive
are
any
getting ahead of
deeper.
ourselves.
Yeah, we should probably we should save some of that. We should actually talk about like the actual like plot of the thing, so people
and use that to frame it. Yeah.
Yeah, because we're going way into.
We are going way far in there. I was wondering
is the bad guy named Johnson?
It's Jameson.
Jameson. Dr. Jameson. Okay. He has a hand given to him by a devil cat to represent his pact, and he is engaging in occultic science. He's trying to summon a giant space eel, space creature.
Yes.
Yeah.
And those were up here earlier in this
There's a little bit of a. That's another thing I'd love to ask Doug about, because there's a little bit of Lovecraft in his stuff, just a smidge of it, and that's that in and of itself is interesting, and I think worthy of exploring the connection between again, this very, as you said, Josh, weird Sunday school approach And then also, like I said, that touch of eldritch horror beyond the stars, cosmic horror elements, which are kind of so like I said, those are some I think also recurring elements that show up. So that's another interesting bit. So, yeah, so you have a ostensibly a humorous evil mad scientist character with a colonial flavor, but he's trying to basically summon a kind of eldritch horror.
And he's doing it using earth eels to lure in space eels through a space speaker, and this has all been constructed in conjunction with the Hellcat. And I love the bonding of the Hellcats over the Sinister Hand.
See, I had a feeling that this would be Cartoonicus's least favorite Doug TenNapel work, just because of the amount of evil Hellcat nonsense that happened in it.
It's a lot more about the fact that these innocent cats are being turned into these monsters and then beheaded by our heroes.
Yeah, that does happen.
Well, survival's got to happen, man.
I do have to say this, and you said this is early, so maybe his artwork wasn't as good, and I didn't realize back then. Did anyone recognize prior to him showing up again later on in the book that this was supposed to be the villain? I thought this was our main character in the beginning.
Oh no!
I got the feel like I knew it was Doug being weird, so it's obviously like, okay, what's the setup? That part I got, because the demon element is very strong and very direct. Okay, I guess the other connection is he seems to have a thing for evil cats. Isn't one of the main villains of Earthworm Jim just called Evil Cat or something?
Yeah.
No. Evil the Cat.
Evil the Cat. Yeah, evil cats is a recurring thing. Yeah, just like I said, there's these motifs, and so I have a list of them. And I'm like, it would be interesting to kind of explore where those come
Doug
from.
Would be a cat person, honestly.
Well, and I think part of it is just a genuine appreciation for cats. Doug's had cats for a long time, and so he has good cats in Gear many are heroic.
Right.
Oh, that's right.
Not,
yeah.
But they're all
there is a motif of evil cat. That's the thing. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
And also evil giant slug thing with enormous thorax.
Well, mind you, that's just how he gets his giant, monster in here.
Yep. The whole space eels. And of course the machine goes horribly wrong. They can't turn it down. The eels coming straight for them, and they're crushed to death as this eel just collapses into the little thing there.
Yeah,
I love
that's
this
a
page.
perfect example. I did not realize till later that they had actually died in that. I thought it was just a comical moment to start off, and he'd be crawling out of the rubble. When he starts telling his origin story, I thought it was this guy who was speaking.
Oh, I didn't, but that was part of it was because they had the timeline earlier, so it kind of conditioned me to look at a flashback, and then all of these clothes are not Edwardian clothes.
I think Cartoonicus' read is that this is him going through time and maybe
also I read this in black and white, so color certainly was not helping. But even so, I was looking at a mad scientist in the beginning. Anybody can dress like a mad scientist, right? It's like a superhero costume.
I see what you mean. So it's like we're jumping from character. Yeah.
Do you know what he reminds me of? Sorry, go ahead.
I think this is a little bit now that you've mentioned that this is an earlier work for Doug, I actually had the feeling while reading it that he's not as sophisticated in some of his, panel to panel sequencing thinking. He does some really ambitious stuff with space and scale and composition, cribbing from Frank Miller black and white stuff. But I guess maybe it feels like a more raw work.
Mm-hmm. I was gonna say the evil colonial mad scientist reminds me of Ben Franklin from Scud.
Actually, there's probably some specific drawdown. When Doug was doing this, it was around that same time that he actually was doing. He knew this Scud guy and did a few
I thought there was
stories
I thought there was a connection there.
Yeah. So that they're actually that could be a drawing point. I don't know, but that's a possibility. So the premise of what creature tech is. Creature tech is. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Go ahead. Yep.
Oh, Creature Tech it's a research facility that the U.S. government has in Turlock, which is it's a little big city in the San Joaquin Valley in California, which is nearby where Doug grew up, and it's a farming community. But in the story of Creature Tech, there's this facility, the RTI, which I forget what it stands for, a Research Technical Institute. There you go. And the government uses that as a place to research all the weird stuff that they find, and they get to be in Turlock for next to nothing, so long as they hire like a certain percentage of locals. And so you've got this guy who's from town. He's a big city dandy. He has to come back to Turlock, and he has to hire all these rednecks around there, and including Jim, right? But this is one of the funniest things I love about this is like this whole work. It's just such a the dichotomy between Dr. Ong's like highfalutin, I can't believe I have to go back to Turlock attitude, and the good and bad of the normal people in town.
Right.
As I absolutely adore that dichotomy.
That's another recurring Dougism, and it's one it's one I appreciate. One thing that Doug has made his career on has been pushing against, and this is, he's always pushing against in a countercultural way against the certain zeitgeists that are in popular media. A lot of the ones he's known for are being like outspoken Christian, outspoken more an evangelical, a Bible-believing evangelical, standing for a one man, one woman, for example, pushing against those things. But another thing he also pushes heavily against, and you can see this in Earthboy Jacobus, you can see it in a lot of his works, including this one, which is the idea that the local yokel is not a ignoramus that needs to be escaped from and looked down on. In fact, the local yokel, and like right here, it's the guy with the red hat. He's shown to be as brilliant a scientist as the city slicker type, the formally trained scientist, and it's Doug actually like draws attention to the fact this guy is not. He does not come from the same background. He's essentially like a blue collar guy. He's portrayed that way, and yet he can understand the science just as well. And so it's a very common, like I said, a Dougism or a trope here to portray regular Americana as not in ways that they have maybe historically not been portrayed. This type of character would often be seen cast. If you think about films, because Doug's always thinking very cinematically, but in a movie about an Indiana Jones warehouse where you keep all the secrets, the local town and the local yokels would usually be portrayed as fear-mongering idiots who need to be shepherded or dealt with by the narrative because they don't understand the complexity of the universe. But I do, and so Doug pushing against that deliberately is going in a different direction with it. So it's at least it's noteworthy that he does that, and I do find elements of that to be refreshing, if not a little heavy-handed here and there. But it's like I said, it is refreshing to be like, oh, here I'm so used to that red hat blue overall guy, like that I'm used to that character being portrayed in such a predictable Hollywood way, and Doug flips that on its head. So it's a hallmark of what he does.
And it's also a reflection of when Doug became interested in like pop culture, mass media in that pre-Deliverance time period. Because if you look at like old B movies, you look at like older films, they didn't always have that city mouse, country mouse disparity in things. A lot of times you'd have films, and I'm specifically thinking of, it's not a great picture, but it's fun. It's Teenage Crime Wave from '54, where like the city people are all touched with the fringes of corruption, and it's the country folk that have the honest, hardworking, blood in their soil
So
kind of
that trope's long running. The one that's
Mhm.
specific to this one here is the scientific
Right.
intellect, because
Right.
that
And
one,
in-
even if you go back to the 40s and 50s, the local yokel might have like a heart of gold, but like the ability to like, talk quantum theory, like
right. Well, and
you're
that's
not gonna see that one.
and that's why Teenage Crime Wife specifically sticks out in my head, because the hero of the piece is the local guy who who's come back from university to save the day, right? So he's gone off to university to study ag science, and then he's come back, and criminals have taken over his parents' house. But like Superman, he's made of the same stuff as his yokel parents, but he's been able to go on beyond that. So he's bridging the gap between those worlds in that story specifically. And that's why that one particularly pops into my mind on this one, because he's got a foot in both worlds, but his heart is in the country. He's gone away so he could come back. That's the whole point. Anyway,
related to Dr. Michael, I want to emphasize something in this early sequence about the protagonist. So Dr. Michael wanted to be a pastor. He finds out his dad was a scientist, and kind of ironically, he rebels against his dad by leaving, pursuing being a pastor and becoming a scientist. So he rebels against his dad by following in his dad's footsteps. He says he becomes interested in the natural world. He becomes a naturalist. So it's important that Dr. Michael has a conflict between faith and reason in his own mind. And he even gets the job at Creature Tech because the government likes that he has a background in religion, because the government is interested in the intersection between religion and science in Creature Tech.
Good point. Yep. Good point. I skipped over that.
Like I said, this is the Indiana Jones warehouse. This is
right.
where they have all of the weird stuff.
Right.
Donovan says criminals ruin everything.
They do.
Oh, hey, a bare butt and a Doug TenNapel comic.
It's in a 90. It's in a 90.
Is all right, yeah.
Just barely.
I swear, in the black and white version, I did not see these little, pearls under her arm to suggest
lace bits.
that.
Yeah.
Ooh, I might not have seen that either. I thought she was naked.
I think they added that in to color it or something. Because that was one of those moments I was like, "Whoa, Doug."
Oh, I that could be. I don't know. I didn't see it. Anyway,
I couldn't complain because Doug loves.
I've got it. She's bare butt naked in the black and white version.
Oh, is she?
It's correct. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I thought that was odd, but at the same time, I couldn't complain because Doug, for some reason, loves drawing guys in their underwear. So this was refreshing almost.
That's the weirdest thing
I've never noticed that, but that's interesting.
I mean, he's drawn himself being given a wedgie by like a weird interdimensional space alien,
right?
So, anyhow, now we're done talking about underpants.
So the pitch. So to basically, again, to tie this into like a synopsis for people who are not familiar, you have our character with a crisis of faith, essentially, or on that journey, essentially, being confronted with supernatural things, but also not being religious himself. They come into contact with a new load of materials that they're cataloging, and then this intersects with the evil mad scientist guy, who's just a ghost, and they discover the Shroud of Turin that's in their catalog of items. And the ghost of the evil mad scientist wants this so that he can resurrect himself and resurrect the space eel thing, so he can take over the world.
So now that we brought up the Shroud of Turin, I want to contrast two things, which is how the villain uses the Shroud of Turin and how Doug uses it narratively. So I actually would totally buy that a villainous sorcerer would try to steal the Shroud of Turin to do resurrection magic, because that's what a blaspheming occultist, that's exactly how a blaspheming occultist would think.
Easily.
And it works. And so I guess like the second element is the way that Doug uses it is straight up as like a goofy adventure plot device. So that's why I think it's kind of weird is if in Doug's logic, the Shroud of Turin has power because it's covered with the blood of Christ, how is that accessible to the demonic, essentially?
I'm more my concern was more is more less plot specific and more tone specific, because regardless of how you rectify the plot, it's the tone that kind of struck me as a bit discordant. But I don't want to like belabor that point. But that's just how I personally.
I did feel that way. I ugly laughed at one Shroud of Turin joke and felt bad while like collapsing in giggles at it.
So I would say, to answer your question directly, Marmaduke, I would say that what you're probably looking at is common grace as the definition for it. That Christ's death has helped even those that hate him because of the way that the church has transformed the world and culture across the world. And if we're going to be discussing any of that, any narrative drives from that, that would be how I would frame that.
Sure. Now I wonder if Doug even gave it that level of thought. Like, to me, what I wonder is the thinking, I need to include this because it's an important religious symbolic element, or is it, I need to include this because this is like a cool Indiana Jones thing, and like the Ark of the Covenant, it blows people up and their faces explode.
Right. That's kind of. Yeah. I think that's the way it comes across to me. Again, but I prefer the Indiana Jones approach, because when they have the Holy Grail, it's treated straight. There's no Grail joke where like, oops, I spilled the cup, I spilled it on a dead bird, the bird came back to life.
Yeah,
ha ha ha. That's the point for me. But this is but like I said, I don't want to belabor that particular point. But that's.
Okay. So also somebody earlier in the chat, Abigail had talked about the Holy Toast, and we do have no Jesus toast, but we do have a cinnamon bun, proof that there is a God in the cinnamon bun.
Oh no!
To which they said, "It looks like John Lennon to me. The Catholics are going to love this thing."
I need to know if this was a reference to Potato Jesus, because this could have been released right around the time.
I think it's Would
it? Does this precede it?
I think this would precede Echo Homo.
I've never heard of potato. I know of the toast.
It's Ecce Homo is the one that Marmaduke's referring to. It's the botched art restoration of a picture of Christ.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. Cartoon, because you'd recognize it if you saw it.
2012. Okay.
So I think that predates or postdates this. I think. Let me see.
Yeah, predates it by like 9 years. Creature Take came out in 2003, so if we're talking 9 years, about almost 10 years before.
So it probably has more to do with the toast. I mean, with the toast and other thought apparitions.
I guess kind of another interesting example of there being like a goofy local who's kind of a hillbilly and played for laughs, contrasting with locals who are, I guess, wiser, like his dad.
Right.
Yep. Definitely a factor. And the thing is, then there's and that's one of the things I actually appreciate about this work, as far as being what I perceive as something of a love letter to rural and pseudo rural America, is the idea that there are all kinds, right? That you have the goofy neighbors and the normal neighbors and these saccharinely sweet ladies on the porch, and you've got the dopey people as well, and so it's that are also given chances to shine, right? And so it's not like we're trying to it's using stereotypes, but it's not placing all people into each stereotype.
Right. Stereotypes are not generalizations.
Right.
So one thing that you can see here, and it's subtle, but it's worth pointing out, and it's something that doesn't get addressed enough, is the fact that a lot of people who are secular are people who leave their spiritual background, their homeland, their hometown, and they want to escape it. The prodigal son leaves his father's home and casts aside everything from it and treats it with aspersion. And so when you
just
look
like
at something
like everyone's favorite book, blankets.
I was literally sort of bring that up. So like literally,
Sorry.
literally in blankets.
Didn't mean to cut you off, man.
Craig Thompson. No, you're just about to preempt me. No, you're good. But there is something. It's kind of indicative, but it's so enshrined in modern culture. The classic, it's a trope, right? It's Beauty and the Beast. There must be more than this provincial life.
Right.
I have to leave my local yokel hometown,
Mhm.
and so it's a kind of it's evidence often of something of a spiritual ailment even.
Now,
I
though
would
Doug
argue.
is okay. Now, I would agree that Doug is pushing back deliberately against the trope
Right.
of the hillbilly rural person. It is also true that Michael's science is an asset. So one of the things that clicked for me was Creature Tech is like a non-evil version of the nice. I won't say Creature Tech is necessarily they're all good guys. They're purely interested in scientific discovery, but they're discovering cures to weird werewolf ailments or werepig ailments. So
Well,
they're
if I may though, if I could just if I could
go for it.
quickly wrap up my point. So what I was trying to illustrate is the fact that in that Hollywood narrative of like the Beauty and the Beast or the other narratives where you have to leave home, home is you find a new home. And if you are in this rural area, the rural area has to change. It's like the town in Footloose cannot stay the town from Footloose. They have to progress in order for the heroes to stay in that town. Otherwise, the narrative would be leaving that town. And what Doug does here is that this place is the place to be. The main character doesn't go, oh my gosh, I can't wait to leave. And the town doesn't have to change its character. The people here don't need to learn a lesson to become more inviting to outsiders or to, progressive politics. In fact, our main character learns to love this area even more because of what it is. That's the distinction.
I will
That's the
point
distinction
out that
I'm
there
trying
is
to make.
also a prodigal son trope as well. If you've ever seen, things like Sweet Home Alabama or even that show Jericho, right? It's always like the kid who went off and he got himself in trouble, and only now, does he find his way back to his hometown and realize what he was missing all this time.
Yeah. Well, and then there are Hollywood movies like the Jim Carrey, what is it, The Majestic, that kind of turns that trope on its head.
Right,
because he needed to lose himself to find himself, right?
Right. The fact that he was never from
true,
there.
but the trope's still very strong. Like that. It's
Yes.
Very,
Well, yeah,
it's very powerful. So the fact
I would agree that the exceptions to the
are
rule
note.
prove the rule, right?
Yeah, they're noteworthy because they do something a little bit different. And so like I said, so that's what makes this interesting. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, Marmaduke. I just
No, yeah,
My
see-
point is to. Yeah.
I see the connection. So it's like our character is literally an ex-Christian, right? And so he's following that pattern. I just think it's interesting that although Doug as writer is pushing back against that narrative, it's not bad that Michael is interested in science. His problem isn't that he loves science. His problem is that he refuses to see anything beyond the natural world or refuses to consider the spiritual world.
Right. And it's and one of the things that I think this also speaks to, and it's in some of Doug's other works too, but it's the anti-elitism, right? It's and sometimes anti-elites get roped into being anti-intellectuals, right? Say, if you reject X narrative that society agrees on, well, you're an anti-intellectual. And that always irks me because it's one of those things where it's like, maybe they just don't agree on the set of facts that you agree on. Maybe there's they're looking at a different alternate explanation for it.
Reese, when did the colored version come out?
2019.
Oh, that is interesting. Because I noticed that our local yokel scientist, who's treated with a lot of respect, had the red hat, and I was like,
Yes.
I want, and that's post 2016. Okay, that
It
was
is.
that was deliberate.
It probably was. It was Catherine Garner did the colors on it. So
Interesting.
It would
So-
not surprise me because as you mentioned, that character, your rural American MAGA hats being portrayed as stupid. So giving that guy a red hat is a. I mean, I'm not saying it's like super. It's not
Well, and-
super
and-
messaging, but it's
well,
subtle.
and it would be
but
one of
it's
those things where it might not have been intentional, but that doesn't mean it wasn't like
there.
intentional.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
There's different levels of intention that are going on, is what I'm saying, right? And so, like, would that hat have been blue? Is there originally? Is there some art out there that could exist? Sure, but it definitely would be red. After 2016,
Right. Yeah.
even if it wasn't like, to throw out the guess in there, even if Doug hadn't intended it, it probably still would have been.
So wait a minute. Somebody published a Doug TenNapel book recently?
Yeah.
Thought he had been blacklisted.
It depends what you mean by blacklisted, right? So
Hollywood maybe, but he's always had connections, and he's had I think his Scholastic deal. He's never lost. I don't think he's ever lost that. Has he?
Why can't I find any of his books for print then?
I don't think. Well, first of all, the ones he published with Dark Horse and Image, they won't reprint unless they think they can sell them again, right? And so they Doug. I mean, Doug continues to have ownership because that's the agreement with them, but they won't front the money unless they're seeing the turnaround with it right away. So that's how their model works. That's why you don't see a lot of old volumes of all their stuff out there.
A lot of books don't get just in life. A lot of books don't get reprinted. That's a thing.
I think some of Doug's Scholastic books are not in print anymore. I think I believe that Newt's is still in print because I think that's still selling pretty well.
If I can add to that point, the fact that things go out of print was why Alan Moore made the deal he made with Watchmen.
That's true. That's true.
That was the assumption, was that this was going to go out of print and therefore he could get the full rights back.
Yeah.
But it was only because Watchmen was such a huge cultural phenomenon that it's never, ever, ever going to be out of print.
Right. Well, and the other thing is, I do think that what I was going to finish up with, I do think Scholastic, while they're, I think that they opted to not renew the contract for future books after 2019, or 18 maybe, but that's or not offer a new contract for that. But they also had a contraction in what they were producing at that point too, so that may not have been a blacklist thing per se. I don't know. So, but I do believe that's the case. Anyway, moving on. This is of course the Ghost of Jameson, and I just love his one spell incantation is Hellcat's Revenge, which the first few times I read it seemed really awesome, and I have to be completely honest. By the end of the book, I was a little sick about hearing about Hellcat's Revenge.
Yeah.
Well, up until the very, very end,
Is that...
which gets funny again. So the ghost is in there to cause chaos, and he unleashes. And this is just a great monster design, guys. I gotta share this. Look at this thing. This is a slug beast that was locked away in one of these things in a little vault. It comes out, and this has an interesting little thing on his chest there. You may want to pay attention for later.
Oh gosh darn it, the black and white is really failing me here. I never would have seen that in a million years.
Oh yeah, even with the big eyeball sticking out of it.
Mm-mm.
I often like.
I was
Doug's
wondering where
works
the heck
in
did this
black
thing
and
come
white,
from? I thought it came from in its mouth or something.
Well, now I got to go. I've never read the black and white, so I picked it up, the colored version when it first was released.
I'll just call attention to a very important plot point. The giant monster has a garbage disposal mouth. It's so cool.
It is, and it's also horrifying.
Yeah. Again, one of those moments that was like, is this the R-rated version?
Yeah. So the you have the he picks up this guy and just it's just Cuisinarts this poor dude. And it's like, oh no, that's my favorite guy. Oh well.
I have no idea why that's necessary either.
Well,
This did not seem like the book where anybody had to die.
but my thesis is this is Doug as 9-year-old, right? And so, like at 9 years old, it's like cool aliens, and the cool aliens kill. He is very much in touch with little kid Doug.
Yeah. Well, and this is also, I mean, this does hit a lot of those, B movie notes, right? And like the Blob or the what's that other one? The Creeping Terror, right? That just this scaly creature that walks across a Midwestern town just eating everything in its way. It goes through the prom and just devours everyone. It gets larger and larger until somebody pops it at the end, right? So, did the guy need to die? Oh, probably not. But it also sets up the stakes, I think. And you have the them fighting over the whole business, right? Trying to save their life, and so you have this moment where scientist old man Jim and Michael are both fighting off this monster while the ghost is sneaking off on parts unseen, right? So, and they have I just want to skip to the fight because there's some fun fight action, but it's not the point. What do you guys think about the salt? Is that too cheap or what?
Kind of a silly. It's a silly early fight. It's clever but silly finale. So I liked it.
I thought it was a nice as a first act thing. I think if the big bad would have been solved this way, I felt would have felt maybe a little bit gypped. But this guy's death is only there to set up the attack of the creature, right? The chest thing.
Right.
Our symbiote.
Yes.
I almost definitely. I think Iron Man was probably on the napkin of ideas for this piece. So it crushes his heart and becomes the pump surrogate heart for his body.
Mm-hmm.
Fair enough.
And then you have this great scene. I love that page.
Nice.
I just do. I just love it. So, now through the course of the rest of the book, we're not going to go through every minute in here. You get to have these two competing stories going on, and one is this introspective journey that Michael is going on, trying to think his way around what life means, not just with a symbiote, but he's rethinking his whole way of being after all of this is going on. His life got saved. He saw that other guy die. He's got this chest hugger that is there. And he's met a girl, which is a whole plot point I don't want to dig into too much, other than to ask about you guys a little bit about how you guys think that's handled. But that's one story, is Michael's story. On the other side of the story is Jameson with the shroud is going around trying to figure out what the extent of it is. And this, as an occult scientist, is doing experiments to see if it can, in fact, bring the space eel back to life after the guy's been dead for, 150 years. And then those intersect as Michael's job then is to hunt down the shroud. He gets pressure from Washington to do that, and all that kind of stuff. But when it comes to the intersection of those two storylines, because they do intersect, but they're not the same. What do you guys think about how that shakes out?
So about halfway through, I had decided that this really would have been better as a series rather than a single story, because the concept of creature tech could be, this is our crazy, paranormal, supernatural, technological, like you said, Indiana Jones place, and every story arc we can focus on a different monster of the week. Today it's the Shroud of Turin. Today it's an alien symbiote, et cetera, et cetera. This thing was packed with stuff. Just the number of ideas and themes and things going on. I was like, wow.
This is true. This is true. Do you feel it was too cluttered to get the point across?
No, it all comes together in the end. It's just, you literally do go through sections in the book where it's like, right now we're focusing on this, and then suddenly we split, and now it's something completely different. And then in the next few pages, it's again. And it's like, by the time I get back to this other thing, I'm like, oh gosh, I forgot that existed.
I think Doug likes to pack his books. And he's even talked about, like, he's pushing out movie concepts, right? But he likes to have one book where he hits you with everything, and then he doesn't turn it into a 30-book series. And like the one book contains the big ideas if it ever gets picked up or adapted.
I think he should think at times about TV though instead of movies.
Yeah. I think this would have been a good TV series. I would agree with that. It's got kind of that X-Files vibe to it, not in terms of like content, but in terms of flavor, right?
Yeah.
That Warehouse 13 kind of a thing to it.
Yeah.
What about you, Twitless? What are your thoughts about all of the story threads that play into Creature Tech? Or did he step away for a second and message me?
If we lost Twitless, I could stall for time. So, okay, I have a thought. So, Doug TenNapel loves the Inklings. He reads Chesterton. He reads Lewis. So I was hunting for C.S. Lewis references. So C.S. Lewis item number 1. C.S. Lewis in Surprised by Joy talks about how he took a motorcycle ride with his older brother. He had already been thinking about Christianity as a English pagan. And he says that his surprising experience was he goes for a motorcycle ride, comes back home from the motorcycle ride, and he realizes he's a Christian now without having like a singular come to Jesus moment, which is why that's why it's Surprised by Joy, right? He was struck by it. He didn't quite see it when it happened. Dr. Michael frequently is riding a motorcycle, and this point's even emphasized, like they comment on the type of motorcycle he rides.
Right.
And his conversion happens almost before he realizes what's going on. He has like a sort of weird mystical experience of the alien's world. He realizes that Christ is present even here, and then he just says, I accept. And the payoff at the end is you find out he's become a Christian without having an on-screen print, which I thought was a really well-handled depiction of a Christian conversion. One more C.S. Lewis point is the demons imitate that screw tape letters vibe down to demons like eating people, and to eat you is to sort of consume your soul in some way. So that's emphasized in Jameson getting his just desserts, but
desserts.
Are you back, Twitless? No,
Sorry.
okay. No, that's fine. Perfectly fine. I didn't realize you had taken off, and so I asked a question. And then,
Oh, I'm sorry. What question? Sorry.
I had asked. I was talking to Cartoonicus about all the different plot threads that are kind of go everywhere through the story.
Yeah. Did you hear me explain my point about?
I did.
Oh, okay.
I did. Yeah, I remember you mentioning about a series, and then Baby was crying, and I had to run. And
Which is fine.
We get it. Congratulations.
yeah.
I compared Creature Tech to Surprised by Joy and Screw Tape letters, basically. And I think it's one of, this was my favorite Doug handling his Christian faith approach. Basically, because Michael doesn't, the way that Michael comes to Christ is it sort of happens before he realizes what's happening.
Right. I think my favorite Christianity story in Doug is probably going to be Tommy Saurus Rex, My favorite Doug TenNapel
Interesting.
of all is Earthboy Jacobus. In this one, I think you see strengths and weaknesses of his storytelling approach. Um,
Yeah, I concur.
the Doug is very much in that sort of youthful mode. You called it the 9-year-old aspect, but the idea that I always feel like with Doug's storytelling, it's every page is, and then this happens, and
And
then
then the
this
ninja
happens,
attacks.
and then this happens, and that's it has its pros and cons. The pro is the fact that these and Doug has actually described them before. He's like he's comics or kind of like movies in his mind, and he's able to
Yeah.
kind of be a director essentially and put it on the page. And the strength of that is that these read very quickly. The weakness of that is that some of the language of comics gets a little bit lost in terms of the compositional elements. Doug's not he definitely utilizes those from time to time, but they're not necessarily as strong as they could be, because it's playing, like I said, like a film. You read one of these books and it's like sitting down for a 90-minute animated feature.
Prepare for mine to get lost.
And structurally speaking, there are weaknesses in storytelling in terms of how plot threads connect. And so I don't think there's anything here that's left too entirely out there, but there are some story threads that are like, I wonder why this was really here. The biggest instance of that is the
Well, there are a lot of jokes. Is that
the
what you're
praying
saying?
mantis guy. In most films, that would have been cut.
Okay, wait, I had a thought about that. So the praying mantis almost becomes a running joke on why is this character here, and
Right.
then and he does this a couple times. He does this gag a couple times. So it's like, okay, the character doesn't seem to serve any purpose, but then he gives this praying mantis this whole,
I know, his whole religious
journey of
experience.
acceptance.
He goes to heaven, but it's like mantis heaven, and then he
We're
gets
gonna
he
get to
hears.
that for sure.
Sure, I'm just saying like there are elements that don't tie together very neatly. I would say the romance in this story actually is I think better than in some other books. You get a more satisfying setup with like, okay, here is where these characters were in the past. They build a relationship in the present, and it's key in the conclusion how that relationship resolves. So in terms of like the pacing of it, there have been a few stories in Doug's oeuvre where it's like, you know, Earthboy Jacobus, I think, was the most egregious example, where it was like 30-second romance arc. We're in love. Here, this one feels much more natural.
Well, I love how you made the joke though about the guy in the mantis.
Oh yeah, the 30-second character arc. Yeah, that still kind of happens, but it's as
Well, and I mean,
Marmaduke said, it's played a little bit for a laugh.
yeah, and I mean, and the other part of it is that I think one of the aspects about one of the subtext in the story. It's not the main part of the story, but one of the subtexts in the story is what is belonging, right? It's that question, and so the mantis guy who doesn't belong is sent to be somewhere to be a thing, but he can't be that thing, so he's cast adrift, and yet he finds a place to belong, right? I think that's actually, so when you have the redneck kid, right, who can't do anything, like he's just like he's his deficit is in his mind, not in his heart, right? And so he accepts Blue, the mantis guy, for whatever he happens to be, and they have a belonging that they both benefit from through the course of that.
My final end cap on that is that I think Doug has actually said this before. I think he said his father was a carpenter.
Yep.
And he said his father was the craftsman. Very meticulous, very, very very polished. And he basically said that in contrast, I'm much sloppier in my technique. much more loose with it, more Jackson Pollocky. Throw the paint on the walls, it makes something out of it. And so that approach to the artwork gives it a lot of energy, which is that he's known for. In the crafting of narratives, that's where you can see some of the strengths and weaknesses. Because as a point of critique, I think Doug his stories always have this vivacious energy. They carry themselves very well from beginning to end, but when you look at them, how the pieces relate structurally speaking, you can sometimes see a difference between him and other authors who are much more, again, like I said, craftsmen, and how the narrative elements all interlock. And Doug's elements don't always interlock super well. They're angles that jut out into weird directions. Why is that there? And it's still enjoyable all the way through, but it's not necessarily not as a craftsman approach to constructing a narrative.
But that's where I say that, again, it would have been fine if you had had an entire full episode to devote to just that character, right?
So I'll give you an example. I think that Jim and Dr. Ohm's dad are essentially the same character. They are both old Christian men in the sciences who have a kind of, well, obviously your dad has a paternal relationship to you, but I almost think you could have cut the dad out and just have the relationship between Michael and Jim be the central, surrogate father son relationship.
Sure.
Well, I think you could have, but I think one of the things that they offer differently is that dad's intimacy toward religion is a point of conversation within it, whereas Jim has this stoicness of dealing with it. And so the answers and the advice that they're going to be given, that a person gives, that those two people give, are going to be different, right? And that's why I think it's interesting that in the romance angle, Jim reaches out to, or indirectly reaches out to Michael to Jim, not to his father, right? And so you end up having different, because the levels of advice are different, right, between the religious journey and the journey to adulthood. They're parallel, but they're not the same.
The way I see Jim is a character I like to use myself in my own story. Rarely see it out there in the wild, and that is what I call the champion. If you consider the classic hero and mentor scenario, right, where you have to have the guy who's going to be able to teach your character, how to become who he's going to become, classic hero's journey and stuff and all, right? If you've seen Kung Fu Panda, you'll notice how you have Oogway and later Shifu being the old, wise, instructor who later on has to be removed from the situation so that the hero can, do this on his own, yada, yada, yada. But then you have also the Furious Five, who basically act as an example of what your main character is trying to become. Right?
So Jim is someone who has facilitated science and religion are the tensions. Michael's struggling with that tension. Jim has mastered those two elements.
Right. It's like the father is the one who's trying to impart wisdom on him. But let me say that the mentor character, that's the idea, that's the job of the mentor, right, in fiction. The champion can be one who has already mastered the skill of it.
If I can, I'd like to mention a couple things from chat. Flyfox Pro says, "I despise the color version. No offense to Catherine, who I love, but it was meant to be black and white." I think I definitely agree that some Doug TenNapel works. I think the one for me is Earthboy Jacobus. When I heard that one was being colored, I went, "Oh, goody." Because I vastly think that work, especially since it deals with kind of like light, dark, binary, good, evil so strongly. I was like, this one just belongs in black and white. The way it's working, it's blacks, and I feel like you would in fact lose something if you color it. And Doug's work very much highlights how some works, I think, work so differently when they are colored as opposed to the black and white. Doug works very, very well in black and white in many cases, so it's interesting which of them I think there's certain works that I don't think it matters as much. I don't think Newt's probably does better in color, if I'm being
Yeah,
honest.
I think Newt's does better in color.
Yeah.
TenNapel is probably one of the few artworks that I don't mind being in black and white. But as we've been discovering, I'm still running into a whole bunch of stuff that I missed because it wasn't. Color is a major communicative property. And
Color is very colorful. It is. Yeah. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I want to touch back into this black and white element. So something, Twitless, you mentioned that Doug's work scans well. If you reduce a composition to black and white, you have to compose to communicate. You have to compose your blacks to communicate, right? So if you don't have Crutch as a color, Crutch can help you communicate and distinguish something. So you have to slam it in black and white. And the fact that he's almost definitely looking at Frank Miller as an example of solid black, white popping into negative space kinds of compositions and silhouettes.
And Mignola as well.
Right.
Yep. Yeah, he's a fan of Mignola. So he's sort of thinking in black and white as he's drawing, which is why I think it scans so well. And that's what they say about manga. People read manga because you can like scan through it. You flip through the pages and reading it much faster.
Yeah. No,
I gotta say that is no easy task to think in black and white.
Yeah, I suppose that's true.
Well, we should probably touch on like how things hit the climax, because the climax ends up is almost a madcap kind of ending, like the end of a comedy where everything's just like the ball is being tossed back and forth between separate parties.
Yeah.
You know, I have it. No, you have. I have the MacGuffin. You have the MacGuffin. I have the MacGuffin.
No.
Yeah, that kind of ending, and that's all done with the Shroud of Turin while it's bringing people back to life.
So one of the things that I wanted to go ahead and hit on too is the kind of blue, right, and his chance for glory in this with his one deadly arm. There's this whole army of demonized cats that are being attacked, and here at a church it's happening, and so one of these guys comes up and just chomps right down on his carapace, and then he's shooting fluids out, and they duct tape him together, which I thought was just great. They're giving him mouth to mouth through the holes, his breathing holes, which is kind of grody. And then we have right here, this is that we were talking about earlier, Bug Heaven.
He loves to do this.
He did it in Gear too.
Yeah.
So, and there's the fact that there's no dialogue kind of bugs me.
Okay, I tried to use AI to discern that, and the only thing I got is that it might be evening. I'm sure it has some important significance in biblical Greek or something, but I ran into AI couldn't help me solve it.
At first I thought it was Yahweh, but no. It's not.
I don't know what the letters are, so I don't know my alphabet enough to read it at all. So
I missed that. I was so rolling my eyes at this point that I just skipped through these pages.
I'm going to defend. It's odd for me because I've criticized some of the spiritual usage in this story, at least regarding Turin. I'm going to defend this one. The Turin stuff, like I said, is played as a punchline, and like I said, I sour on using anything sacred or even like related to sacredness in that as a punchline. I just do not care for that. And like I said, that's kind of my personal take on things. I'm not going to say anyone else has to have that view, but that's mine. I will say that this is the kind of thing that if you're going to do what's called we were reading a Williams piece, War in Heaven, and it was described as a spiritual fantasy. I think Fly Frogs Pro said that. He called it a spiritual fantasy. If you're going to do a spiritual fantasy, and you're going to have different races, different alien species, like from across the cosmos, what Doug is inferring here, or outright explicitly stating without saying it, is that when the aliens die, heaven still exists to them, and there would be other aliens in heaven as well, and that they would see angels a little differently than we would, because they're aliens. But this is essentially a unity. This brings together. It's not just. I know we were laughing at bug heaven, but I think the way we're supposed to interpret this is that this is just regular heaven. It's just being seen through a bug's eyes.
Yeah.
And that's what ties that together is the fact that what's on the scroll isn't alien gibberish. It is in fact the thing that would unify the cosmos together, which would be the word of God as spoken to, like his chosen people.
That's interesting.
So like that, this scene, even though it's a little fanciful, I think is far more thematically respectful of this material it's handling than the Shroud of Turin is.
To bring a connection to C.S. Lewis again, there's a whole subplot in the Space Trilogy where the hero thinks that aliens are evil monsters that eat people, and it turns out the aliens are all Christians. And I think it's in Paralandra. There's a whole section where he sees a giant insect and he's afraid of it, but then he sees it through another lens. And through the second lens, he sees it as a creature of God, which is interesting because you can see the insectoidal as a metaphor for the demonic because they're ugly, ugly little things. But then they actually are part of God's world. So this is almost like the beautiful conclusion is that these aliens, though they look weird, they have souls, and they're part of the true Christian world.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, sorry, I got myself sidetracked trying to figure out what the heck it says while you guys were chatting. But the point is that he's, for whatever it is, he's got to head back to the world of the living, and go from there. So it's a miracle. The duct tape worked. I hadn't picked up on that until now.
There were two other options I thought was going to happen here. Either I figured they'd have to chase down the villain, get the shroud, and use that to heal him, or that he was going to have to sacrifice himself by giving up his symbiote.
That happens later.
Either of those seemed like better options.
Well, and here's the funny thing about that right now is, like, what I was laughing about was Dad says it's a miracle. There's no way this guy should, and then Michael's response is the duct tape worked. It's not a miracle. It's the duct tape.
Thematically important because Michael sees with his eyes and he just concludes, well, that's all there is to it.
So, which is, of course, the MacGuffin to get them to the museum. Why the museum? I don't remember why they went to the museum.
Oh yeah, okay. There's an alien corpse there, and
yep.
I think that's where the bad guy thinks the space eel is. So he's going there because he's trying to resurrect the space eel itself. So bad guy's on space eel. He's going to be king of the world. Okay, the back and forth between a big part of the climax and what you were referencing, Twitless, was Michael has the confrontation with the bad guy. The only reason Michael can use this alien is because it's part of his body. So when the bad guy heals him, he loses the alien and the alien starts to die. And the twist is that the alien is capable of making moral choices. The alien became a Christian too.
Mm-hmm. Well, then they play some interesting. This was clever. It's gross, but it's clever because you have two mechanics in play. You have, again, setting aside the religious aspect, you have a MacGuffin. You have two MacGuffins, essentially. And this is interesting because a lot of plots in stories revolve only around one MacGuffin. So this is a clever thing, which is the fact that you have two MacGuffins and how they intersect. One MacGuffin can magically heal or bring you back to life. The other MacGuffin will essentially revive you if you're in mortal danger. So essentially what you have is, the villain and the hero play some very interesting games with those mechanics. And so the villain says, okay, I can't beat you because the symbiote's is like very combat oriented, and so it can deflect enemy attacks. It's really good. And so the villain says, okay, my counterplay, because I have the magical healing MacGuffin, is if I heal you by that mechanic, because that
Right.
essentially you're injured. That's why you have the symbiote, and the symbiote is making you strong. If I heal you, the symbiote will be removed, which is what happens. And then the bad guy, at some point, mortally wounds himself so that he can get the symbiote attached to him. But now the fight's on his terms. So, like I said, they're playing these games with, I have the MacGuffin that heals, I have this MacGuffin that makes me makes me better at fighting, but only if I mortally hurt myself to then become dependent on the life support of the symbiote. And so the two of them kind of play games with the mechanics of those two specific MacGuffins, and that's interesting.
And so before we get into that part of it, because I want to show the screens, but here we have the symbiote is evolving because of this most recent attack. This is just after the girl was kidnapped, right? He's able to gaze into the future through this unknown biological technological thingamy, and then he walks into an eye and disappears. Michael shows up on this desert or this abandoned plot, and he finds another being with a symbiote, right? And he walks with this guy, and he's inviting him to join a brotherhood and follow him with that. And there's all these other creatures that are also carrying these symbiotes. And where are they going to? But here, right? The symbol that they're wearing around their neck, there is a symbiote who's been nailed to it, right? And that's when he's teleported back into the location where the truck is at, where Jameson is in, and we have the Moccasin Creek where the first thing was, right? So, and this is where that Twitless was just talking about. He places the symbiote on top of Michael, so he's healed, and then the symbiote is about to die. It's got nothing to attach to, and this is her cat, by the way. His little sting
Poor
there.
Gordon.
Yeah, poor Gordon. And he shoots himself in the heart, so the symbiote, trying to preserve its life, attaches himself to Jameson. Right. So that is just before the final climax there. So, but yeah, I think that's all fun stuff. Fun stuff for sure.
To tie it with a bow, the surprise is because the alien is capable of making moral choices. You're kind of wondering, is this thing like a demon? Is this thing just like a weird bug thing that's going to kill him? So that is the twist, is realizing it's conscious, and a lot more than just conscious, but alive and moral. One touch I loved is in the alien world, they wear a square because a square is the symbol of Christ in their world. They put that on him, and when he comes back, then it becomes a cross. You see it around his neck the whole time, and it's emphasized in the very last shot. That's the pregnant closing the point. The world hasn't changed. I'm the one who's changed.
Mm. Now, one of the things that I do question about this story is Jameson's entire plot. He's resurrected the space seal. He's using it to generate electricity to, blow things up, to just terrorize the world. Is that it? Is there another motivation that I've missed?
Well, I think he had revenge for, what was it? Was he put to death?
They called him a mad scientist. He made a deal with the demon and summoned a giant space eel to prove he's not a mad scientist.
Okay, that is just all it was. Okay. So that was the thing I was wondering about, because it just seemed just kind of crazy to me about that part. But in any case,
remember what his motivation in the very beginning was, but I know he wanted revenge on this town.
Yeah. Well, and this in other towns too. I mean, that was he talks about that too. It just was like, but revenge for what?
It was
So
that I can't remember what they did to him.
Oh, it's
It
textually
was
they called
definitely
him a
that
mad scientist.
classic.
Yeah.
Right, it was that classic. I'll show them. Everybody doubted me.
There was also a subplot where he was flogged in public for practicing sorcery. So
I knew there was something.
that could have been a part of it. So, Colin says, "I hope I'm not late." I'm sorry, Colin, you're late. That's okay though. I didn't tell no one ahead of time. So back onto the plot. They have a Russian teleporter that they discovered, and they teleport this little bit of the shroud that got left behind in the machine when it was tore way back in Act 1, and they stick it onto this alien who happens to be a real alien, and he came to he gives out the call, and sure enough, the eel listens to his master and starts ignoring Jameson. Which is hilarious to me. And long story short, he's knocked off, and the Jameson goes to try to attack him, and whatever, and then this knockdown drag out fight ensues, and he brings himself Michael allows himself to be killed, and then the symbiote reattaches itself to him.
That's the crux of the choice aspect.
Yes.
Whether it's it becoming Christian or moral, the fact that it definitely prefers him to the evil satanic occult guy, and so given that the two of them are mortally injured, it chooses to be with Dr. Michaels.
Right.
And that is the turn that allows them to win.
But then the last ditch here we have Jameson, who can't die because of his contract with the Hellcat. He calls the Hellcat to do one last thing, which is to incinerate the shroud. Oh no, now it's all over with. But and he's protected because of his whole thing, so he'll just wander the earth as a ghost. That's what the ghost what he'll do. But then the symbiote snips off the hand. This gets back to what Marmaduke fan was talking about back a few while ago. I hate English food, but today I'll try to get over my hatred.
That's different than how it is in the first book, I think.
Oh, in the black and white one?
In the first book he says something like, "We're having a fine meal, an English dish."
Okay.
So Doug took the opportunity to kind of like rework some of his bits and pieces here.
Yeah, and he actually mentions that in the introduction to the colored version. Like he took away most of the cell phone antennas, and that kind of thing. So that some edits definitely probably happened. He said there were a few lines he just didn't care for after 20 years later or whatever. So that is basically the book. You do have a denouement where it's back to another church picnic. There was a church picnic earlier we skipped over.
Don't forget
the and that whole business. And then I don't want to spoil the total end of it, except for the very last page, which I tell you what, the first time I read this last page, I broke down bawling.
Okay. Does someone in our circle own this page?
Yes, I can't remember who, but somebody did pick it up from them. I cannot recall who it was. It was either Flyfox.
Flyfox might own this one. Yeah.
Yeah. It was either Flyfox Pro or Michael. What's his last name? Out in San Francisco. Picked it up at somebody. Can't remember who it was though. Picked it up at the art show that Doug did last year up in Moscow, Idaho. So, or bought it from him ahead of time. I can't remember which it was now. I'm getting my stories all confused in my brain. Anyway,
a sad robot asks who Flyfox is. Flyfox Pro. He's been on some of our shows and he does comments.
Yeah.
So he was in the chat today. Yeah,
he was in the chat earlier today. Yep. He lives in Arizona and thinks about art and Baptist confessional Baptist theology. So there you go.
Christ is king. We win in the end, boys.
So let's go ahead and call that there the show. We'll wrap that quick. What are people's final thoughts about Creature Tech?
Rough, but a total blast. And I was affected, but I kind of agree with Twitless, where there's a rough quality that adds charm and can also be a little annoying in places. But I thought the character handling for the protagonist was on point throughout.
Yeah, I put it in the middle of all of Doug's books because there were absolutely parts I hated, but there were also parts I loved, and it was like Whiplash, where every page or two I would change my mind. But I am glad that the end result is. Ooh, I lost you.
Whoops.
We lost the host again. We have taken over.
It used to happen once a week, so it's actually this is a return to form. He'll be back in a minute. You can continue on, Curtinicus.
Anyway, yeah. I do appreciate how it ended in the end. No matter what. So that's a net positive. And what else was I going to say? That I think this may be the first Doug TenNapel book that didn't have some kind of sourness at the end thrown in there. Remember?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Earthboy Jacobus has a sad note at the end.
It's more ominous. Yeah, it has an ominous note. That's the interesting thing about Jacobus is there's like a threatening note at the end there. I think it depends because there are definitely books that they definitely have a little more. There's maybe a little bittersweetness, like Ghostopolis. There's a little bittersweetness, but it's mostly on the sweet. It's mostly leaning into the positive. But there's a little bit of like, oh hey, this guy died, but he gets an afterlife with his beloved, and so it's okay. And Tommysaurus Rex ends pretty positively. There's a bittersweetness, but then very redemptive ending. So this one doesn't necessarily have as much of a bittersweetness to it, I guess. The bittersweet part essentially is the character is never going to be fully without the symbiote.
Yeah, but I think he's discovered that by that point that's a good thing.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Like this, the bittersweetness is actually very much, it's not nearly as you don't need to really cope with that ending.
Maybe a subplot. He's back. So a subplot I wanted to emphasize is, I guess, kind of like in the world of incel Gen Z dating culture. This is a very sweet book in that it's a grown man who's married, like weird sensitive young man who found the wife who loves him and the lovely Mrs. TenNapel. And his point is, what makes Dr. Michael worthy of love is his self-sacrificial. He makes a sacrifice for the woman he loves. In contrast to, like, I think there's like a goofy scene where like a guy gets a girl, he says, "Hey, we're gonna do it. I'm a guy, we gotta do it," and then he gets eaten by a monster. So there's the selfish male drive and the selfless. The man who follows Christ learns selflessness essentially.
For me, I definitely put this one in the middle. And like I said, mostly for personal, reactions to certain things. I think in terms of objectively its quality as a work, again, I also would probably put it in the middle. It's got rough aspects to it. It's a very Doug TenNapel work. It doesn't seem very much, it doesn't stand out as being like, higher or lower necessarily. It's very much, like I said, in the speed of things. I definitely like it better than, I think it's, in terms of my ranking, I put Newt's at the bottom, I think. I put Jacobus at the top. Well,
I can understand. That I can understand, but
I was gonna say if you're gonna rank works, one of them is gonna end up at the bottom.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
And in my opinion, structurally speaking, Newt's is at the bottom.
I don't know. I think if I was to have a bottom, this is the thing. Maybe you understand. We haven't talked about it. I haven't read it back again, but I'd probably put Tommy Soros toward the bottom.
Really?
That's so weird.
How is Rat Fist not the bottom book?
Well, it's there too. I found Rat Fist more interesting than Tommy Soros, and maybe it's because I'm not a pet person. I mean, I have pets.
I have a read on. I'm glad that you're here.
Emotional attachment to pets.
I actually have
Tommy Soros.
I have a read on Rat Fist that I think might bolster it up a bit. But anyway, so like I said, Newt's to me is on the bottom. I put honestly Gear that we read recently. I think Gear shot way up near the top because it was so unique and different with what it did.
I really like Gear.
It's so okay. So Gear's a great example because Cat Scratch is almost nothing like what Gear is. So
yep.
I'm just saying that in terms of like the experiments he's running in Gear, he like almost doesn't. I don't think he does them again. And so like just the risks and what he's doing with that story. But anyway, this one, like I said, is definitely in the middle for me. But it's artistic. In terms of people looking for a cinematic romp, it is just like everything. A lot of what Doug delivers. Doug delivers cinematic romps, and they're usually a lot of them are based on like a what if statement. What if I could fly? What if cardboard could be created into reality? What if I had a crazy symbiote attached to me and the Shroud of Turin were found? So like I said, for people looking for another cinematic romp with a fanciful, even a youthful or even childlike approach to one of those what if statements, like I said, this would be right up your alley. And the more, as much as I've had, my critiques of Doug here and there, my statement still remains true, that I would much rather spend time in Doug's mind than Gene Yang's. So that has played continually. It's still true.
And I agree. And I know I'm not going to say I agree. I know where you're coming from, but like Gene still did 2 of my favorite comics projects. I mean, it's in a big list. They're in a big list. But
sure.
I mean, Boxers of the Saints. I loved Boxers of the Saints. I know you didn't. I loved Boxers of the Saints, and I loved the Shadow Hero.
The Shadow Hero is probably the exception. Like the Shadow Hero, I think is the one.
I love both of those.
I think Shadow Hero. If I'd only ever read Shadow Hero, I'd probably have a very different opinion of Yang.
And like I haven't finished. I read about half of his Monkey Prints for DC. I really enjoyed that.
I didn't really care for that either.
Well, I can understand. I can understand that. I mean, it's not brilliant. It's fun and kind of basic.
I think I would be okay with it if it weren't part of DC. I just every time Yang is ironic as it sounds. Yang is a cultural colonizer. And I'm just
you guys ruined the Avatar comics for me because I saw it's Gene Luen Yang, and then I started reading the Avatar comics. Oh no, he's doing a immigrant crisis, identity crisis in the Avatar comics.
Can't avoid it, and at least Doug has his own tropes and cliches, but his cliches and tropes are what if boogers became alive and could talk, also became Christian.
Yeah,
like that. That's what Doug.
I would say, and I think that's one thing that does separate them is like Doug's sincerity is laced with confidence.
Yang's Woody Allen.
Gene's sincerity is laced with doubt.
He's Woody Allen. He's Woody Allen. He's and Orson Welles' statement on Woody Allen rings true about it, which is there's something kind of there's something off-putting and disgusting about someone who is smugly self-effacing. So anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to make this a conversation about Yang. I'm just saying overall,
it's fine.
After reading after reading like a dozen or more Doug books, I still feel like I hit the same point, which is like I don't think I could read Yang's Mind Space one more time. And Doug's like, okay, what booger is going to talk today? And then also say that it's a Christian. So
you actually brought up. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say one thing that surprised me was the willingness to swear. I like that Doug is willing to be naughty in Christian books. I think, we need everything to be G-rated hurts a lot of Christian writers. This one, yeah, like I don't think I could give this to, like, I always think, can I give this to my nephew? It's probably too mature for my nephew, to be honest. Like, this is a good old PG-13 book.
Mm-hmm. And which, again, that's also when it comes down to looking at, like, is this death necessary? I mean, the story could have, with the first guy dying, especially, could the story have continued without that guy dying? Yes, but it set some of the tone for the thing, and it's not a despite the cartoony style, it's not a book for kids, small kids.
It's kind of a book for kids.
Kind of like that. Yeah. 9-year-old, 10-year-old boy.
It's for
yeah.
tweens. Yeah, it's
tweens. There you go.
Tweens. He hits tweens like a bullseye is like his demographic.
Yeah. Well, and Colin raises a really interesting point here. I actually like Christian stuff being clean, but I understand not making it squeaky clean. And I think that's one of the things that in Forces we always wanted to try to do is we use it for humor because it's a humor book. But like our characters, our teenagers swear, just like the teenagers that I worked with. But we always edit them in humorous ways. And so that because I think that's funny.
So I'll put it this way. There is a writer called Kenzie Johnson and Bill Myers who did McGee and Me, and so there's a cadre of evangelical entertainment that is squeaky clean. Adventures in Odyssey by Focus on the Family, like I said, polish it, like absolutely, like nothing like objectionable in it. What was neat about Doug was that Doug was the type of person who there are different types of ministry, and one of the ministries is the squeaky clean stuff. Like that's necessary, and it's also necessary to send somebody into the slum and be able to kind of draw someone closer.
Right.
And I think Doug is his works are able to do some of that. They're able to reach people and reach audiences that you couldn't reach with Adventures in Odyssey. I love Adventures in Odyssey. It's top tier Christian content.
Right.
But I do acknowledge that, the Marmaduke's, the naughtiness that Doug is able to do without violating any precepts, I think. Or largely without doing that, and allows him to reach an audience you wouldn't be able to reach with some of that other content.
Yeah, and I think it also allows the flexibility, I guess you could say, of separating righteousness and cultural norms, because those aren't necessarily the same thing. And when somebody is being naughty in a Doug book, it reads differently than when somebody's being evil in a Doug book, right? And I think that is something, I think that's something that's worthy to note in his work, is that there is that difference in there, even in the way they're.
So Colin's asking about this. So I'll give an illustration. So the scene I'm thinking of is the family sitting around having a prayer. The monsters come in and attack them. The dad swears, and the mom censures him for swearing. And then the monster grabs her baby, and then she says, like, "Oh, my baby, you bleepity bleep." So the gag, obviously, is that the Christian family is presenting this kind of like clean-minded attitude for their children. But at the same time, you're a mom, and it's humor rooted in a real aspect of us, right? It's descriptive. It's descriptive of real life.
Right.
I think Colin's raising a fair point. Like I tend to lean more towards his camp typically in how I approach things. Cartoonicus, I think, does so as well. What I'm saying is that I do appreciate what Doug has been able to do, because there are people who have read his graphic novels, never would have picked up the evangelical Christian content that like Adventures in Odyssey, which is like I said, Adventures in Odyssey is not amateur. It is like it is top tier quality.
Absolutely.
But there's so many people who just see it and go, "This is Christian," and they immediately turn it off. And Doug's able to it's weird to say this term. He's able to seduce them. I have the story, and you're not going to know that it's Christian until it's too late. I already have you on the hook.
I mean, except that if anyone has ever worn his heart on his sleeve in his books, it's also Doug.
That's what I'm saying. But
he's not exactly luring you in slowly.
Well,
He,
Okay, this is why I said
he baits that hook.
5 pages in, he's talking about being a minister's son and having left it. Like, it's not like this is going to slowly...
this is why I called him a converted pagan. So he'll have his characters argue about evolution on screen because that's the topic he's interested in textually as an evangelical, and he'll use the Shroud of Turin as this weird, crazy plot device because he's half irreverent. So when in Dragon Ball, there's like a scene in Dragon Ball where one of the kids makes a cross and then Dracula freaks out and then the words Jesus Christ flash over. It's kind of an irreverent gag, but the gag is Jesus is stronger than vampires. So it reads as it's not reverent, but it's appreciative of Christianity.
It's respectful on some level.
Yes, you as a good pagan don't want to offend Christians, and I'm sure this Jesus is a powerful God. Maybe he's as strong as Thor, or maybe not. But I certainly don't want to offend this Jesus God of you. That's the clean pagan idea. Doug almost operates in that mode when he's in weird mode, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But my point is that, like, you could have a perfectly, let's say that you were dealing with a series, right? You could go for 22 episodes and, basically never have a clue that anything religious is going to pop up. But then as you get deeper into the story, it slowly starts getting there, right? And by the time you're there, it's like you get to appreciate whatever, the conceit of the story is. And that happens to be, it's like, here's our material. It happens to be Christian. In the same way that any Disney movie might make something about voodoo, or
that's Matt Krotz. That's basically Matt Krotz's approach. Kyrie is very much on that level. Yeah.
With Doug, it's like as soon as he starts arguing with his father about evolution versus creation, that this is the conversation of this comic. It's not going away. Right?
He still baits the hook with things that are very comfortable to a secular audience.
Right. Well, and
the presentation of it is so familiar that's the seductive aspect of it. Oh, this is like an action film for kids that I can it's normal, and the Christianity is there, but you're already, like I said, it's too late. You've already been hooked by the things that are so familiar to you.
Yeah. So
including some of the language usage.
And I think that's one of the strengths of the way that his framing works. Is that by being upfront about it, one of the things that it's doing is it's normalizing that conversation, right? So he's saying, like, when I was growing up, right, my family didn't do this, but almost everybody I knew, right, they said that, like, the two things we never discuss, religion and politics, right? And those are the only two things worth talking about. Right? Even discussions about art and discussions about moral law, they're all really religion and politics, right? Yeah. And so you can't even have a complete conversation if you keep religion and politics off the table, right? And when by a strategy in that thing is by being overt about it, right? That means that there's no question that we're going to be having a complete conversation. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean every Doug book is a complete conversation, but it does mean that Doug, in this book specifically, Doug gives Michael and his father the space to be uncomfortable together, right? Because they're not bound by being nice to each other. They're not bound by avoiding these contentious topics. And so when they have agreements or when they have arguments, you can read that they're being sincere about it because we've seen them have genuine disagreements on the subject. And that also allows the reader to normalize these ideas as being worthy of discussion.
I want to defend the argument between Michael and his dad, because when I read it, I thought, okay, that's kind of clunky and very on the nose. But it's like in the Brothers Karamazov, the brothers have an argument about the existence of God, and then the story illustrates the content of the argument. You see it played out. In this, he and his father have an argument about God, but the story subtly points out the implications of that argument. So giving it to you up front gives you kind of like the framework to see it being woven carefully for the rest of the book.
And it also makes it feel like you're not smuggling in these themes, as it goes along. And at least I appreciate that. And I'll be honest, guys. Like I said, I'm a super sentimental guy, right? I'm a sap. So like when they run into the crucifixion scene in here, right? Like I get a little tear starting to throb right at the edge of my eyeball every time I read it, right? Even when I know it's coming up. Same thing at the end of Cardboard. I just get choked up every time I read Cardboard. So I might not be the perfect audience for that, but I do appreciate that it's just that Doug's style makes it overt that what we're talking about, and that it doesn't. And I don't feel that even the on the nose of it detracts from the artistry as such. And and like I said, I can agree with your perspective that this has got some roughness around the edges. There are some of the scene transitions that I feel I had to give some few extra pages to if I was writing this out. But I mean, but I still really appreciate the forthrightness of it and hitting the topic like it does. But
Well, and that brings up something I wanted to ask everybody, because as far as you want to talk about Doug TenNapel tropes, there are three things that he does in general and three things he does really well. One is absolute absurdity for the purpose of absurdity, right?
Mhm.
One is using major metaphors and the symbolism and allegories and stuff. And the third is this, just wearing his heart on his sleeve, whether it be religiously, politically, or both in the case of Earthboy Jacobus. It was only in, and this was what made Ratfist so hard to read for me, was that it was only in that book I noticed that he was actually using all three at once. Usually, he seems to jump around from one to another, or maybe get two in the same book, but he doesn't go crazy with. He actually does different kinds of books here and there. So my question was, judging this not as a Doug TenNapel book in general, but as a Doug TenNapel book wearing his heart on his sleeve book, where would you rank this?
I still say it's solid. It's not in the masterpiece level, but it's in the solid. I thoroughly enjoyed myself popcorn movie level.
Okay.
I don't know. I really appreciated the inkling, C.S. Lewis, Tolkien, mythopoeic ideas that are snuck into it, and that's a lot of that's happening in the background. So it's served with a lot of sugar and popcorn, essentially.
Okay.
yeah, I'm not sure how I'm not sure how I'd put that up there. I just know it's Creature Tech is amongst the top of my Doug list. That's all I can say on it. I don't know that I would separate the ones that I think differently about, but
Top five, not top one, but top five for me.
yeah,
Still middle.
Still middle.
Still middle.
Even in that frame. Okay. Well, guys, I think we've pretty much talked about everything that we want to today. Is there anything else I'm forgetting?
We should all shill our comics.
Well,
I draw Jane Smith Wannabe Gladiator, and I'm back in the art studio after a hiatus. We're going to knock it out.
excellent. Very cool. First issue was a tour de force, and if you haven't read it, you should, but you can't go to the description because I didn't put any links in it. So there you go.
Read Kitty's Day Out.
And is that's on Tapas and Webtoon?
Tapas just right now.
Just right.
I have one final update, 2.0 update, before I do some DLC, and then when I know I will have everything chef's kiss, then I'll put it on other platforms.
Excellent. Colin in the chat says, "Go read Emerald Man." I agree. I do agree. Search engine jump scare. I'm not sure what that means.
That's
It's funny
interesting.
though. I, of course, Reese, idealcomics.net. You can see a bunch of our stuff there. We are working on stuff in the background. It's just taking a lot longer than I want it to right now, but that's the story. And Twitless, what are you doing, man?
We're still doing Super School. There's been a little gap here and there, but I'm hoping to get back on the horse with that. Also, Mega Girl number 7 should be coming out pretty soon. Probably, hopefully, I'm having it'll be out. My goal is to have it out by Heroes Con this year. So if you come see me at Heroes Con, you can get an issue 7, which kicks off a major story arc.
I need to catch up on the Adventures of Omega Girl. I have been lax.
Colin has been responding really well, giving some excellent feedback and stuff I'm gonna have to address. There are some critiques I had to address, but it is a the way I'd like to put it, it's a return to form for superhero comics. So that's my pitch for it. So
I like it. That actually it feels really, really good to say that. I like that frame of that. So he says more Omega Girl before I run out of money.
Seconded.
So well, that is the show. Next week, guys. Next week, I want you guys to come back here because we are reading through. Can I reach it? I can't reach it. Shazam and the Monster Society of Evil.
It's going to be an interesting conversation. Marmaduke, you should join us for that one. That's a
I want to get into Shazam. How recent?
As written by Jeff Smith.
This is Jeff.
Oh yeah, that's right.
This is Shazam through the lens of Bone.
All right, I love Jeff Smith. This is perfect.
Yeah, that's why I said you should join in because you're going to have an interesting take on this one.
I'm already interested in it, and I of course I picked it up a few years ago. Haven't read it yet, so that'll be an excuse to read it then. And then after that, I think we're doing a mystery science book that
I was hoping to do some mystery science theater content because I've been watching an ungodly amount of mystery science theater, and and also they did a comic, so it's time for us to talk one of the most important genre and culture defining things that no one even I think realizes was so culture defining, which is the mistying things.
Yeah, indeed. Very, 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 very potent stuff there. So, speaking of which, did you hear that they finally found the lost KTMA episode?
Which one was that?
It was episode 3.
KTMA.
It was back when it was on public access TV.
Fugitive Alien, I think it was not Fugitive Alien. I can't remember what the name of it was, but it was the 3rd episode.
Did you? I did not hear that.
Yeah.
I go ahead.
And what happened was it like the master had gotten sold off at some point, and somebody was hanging on to it. So and recently, somebody bought like a crate of VHS cassettes at a garage sale, and the original master was in the box, and it's up on YouTube now, I guess. So
that's wild.
It got dropped up like a couple weeks ago. One of my co-creator of Forces, he texted me frantically last week saying, "You're never going to believe what happened." I don't know if he was really frantic, but he seemed really excited through the text. So
the big news for Mystery Science Theater is that they're coming out with, I think it's like a couple of episodes, or it might be just one. They're doing they're bringing back like the whole band practically. So Mike and crew and Trace and Frank.
Yep.
So they're gonna do at least I think one or more episodes with like they brought the band back together. So
they're building new robots, new sets. Yeah, it's pretty exciting.
So we'll see how that turns out.
Well, it's going to be Blue's Clues Mystery Science Theater edition.
Anyway, we can talk about that later. But anyway, we should totally do some. I know Hutch loves Mystery Science Theater stuff, so I think there'd be a lot to talk about there. Yeah,
that'll be great. So that's 2 weeks, I think, and I believe week after we're looking at Batman Year 2, because getting back to our Batman train, which we've been off for a while. So that'll be fun to read some old
I
Batman.
want to do a Valiant night. It's time.
Yeah,
it's time to do some Valiant.
Okay, we'll put that on the schedule after that then.
Like Prince Valiant?
Okay.
No, like Valiant
Yeah,
comics.
Valiant Comics, yeah.
Oh, here, Sad Robot says no. Blue's Clues is Mystery Science Theater.
Oh, that's
great.
weird though, because then that would mean that the kids watching the show and participating are the Mystery Science Theater. So it's like the converse of Mystery Science Theater.
That's interesting.
So it's host segments. The whole show is host segments. Okay, that's it. We're done. Got to call it. Thank
Catch
you
you
guys
later,
for coming
everybody.
in.
Yep,
You
yep.
guys out there, internet land, thanks for tuning in. Get out there and read some Captain Marvel comics, and we will see you all after signing off from Monitor Duty. You guys have a good one.
I actually also wanted to pitch